Picture a train arriving in Punjab, 1947. The silence is chilling. When the doors open, the horror is revealed. The carriages are filled with the bodies of massacre victims. This was partition, a political decision that unleashed chaos, turning neighbors into enemies and freedom into a nightmare for millions. Now, shift to Stalingrad, 1942. A young German soldier, frostbitten and terrified, clings to survival in a frozen trench as artillery thunders overhead. The Battle of Stalingrad was a brutal siege, a turning point that shattered armies and changed the fate of the world. Partition and Stalingrad seem worlds apart, one a civil implosion, the other a clash of totalitarian giants. Yet both were crucibles of suffering that reshaped the 20th century, leaving scars that still shape our world. In India, politics failed to unite communities. In Stalingrad, ideologies saw people as expendable. Ordinary people were caught in the crossfire, their lives destroyed by forces beyond their control. These stories, of refugees fleeing ancestral homes, of soldiers fighting in ruins, remind us of the true cost of history's turning points. The echoes of these tragedies still reverberate today. They are warnings of what happens when politics and ideology override humanity, and they challenge us to remember the real people behind the headlines of history. These events aren't just distant history, they're alive in today's headlines. Partition created India and Pakistan, but also a rivalry and a border that remains one of the world's most dangerous flashpoints. The unresolved issue of Kashmir, born from partition, has fueled wars and nuclear tension. Stalingrad's Soviet victory set the stage for the Cold War, dividing Europe and shaping global politics for decades. The trauma of partition shapes identity and politics in South Asia. Stalingrad is a symbol of Russian resilience and sacrifice. Both events warn of the dangers of religious nationalism and totalitarian ideologies. They force us to confront questions of identity, belonging, and the fragility of peace. Understanding them is key to understanding the world we live in now. Partition's roots run deep in British colonial rule, where divide and rule policies fueled religious divisions. As independence neared, the Indian National Congress pushed for a secular state, while the Muslim League, fearing marginalization, demanded a separate homeland. The two-nation theory became the rallying cry for Pakistan. Failed negotiations and rising communal violence made partition seem inevitable. The British, weakened by war, rushed independence, leaving little time for planning. A British lawyer with no knowledge of India was tasked with drawing the borders, setting the stage for disaster. Stalingrad was the collision of two dictators, Hitler and Stalin. Hitler's invasion of the Soviet Union aimed to destroy Bolshevism and seize resources, turning the war into a campaign of annihilation. By 1942, the Germans pushed deep into Soviet territory, splitting their forces to capture Stalingrad, a city of symbolic and strategic value. For Hitler, taking Stalingrad was personal. For Stalin, defending it was a matter of survival. Stalin's "not one step back" order made retreat a crime, turning the city into a fortress. The German Sixth Army, confident and well-equipped, faced battered but determined Soviet defenders. Every street, every building became a battleground. The city on the Volga was about to become the epicenter of World War II. Here, the ambitions of two ruthless leaders would clash in a storm of steel and fire. The outcome would change the course of the war and history. In June 1947, partition was finalized. Sir Cyril Radcliffe, a British lawyer unfamiliar with India, had 5 weeks to draw the new borders. The Radcliffe line sliced through villages and homes, separating communities overnight. The border announcement was delayed, creating chaos and fear as British authority collapsed. Millions found themselves on the wrong side, triggering a desperate, violent migration. Armed militias unleashed horrific violence, massacres, abductions, and ghost trains filled with the dead. Up to 2 million were killed, and up to 20 million displaced. Neighbors became enemies. Families were shattered. Independence was overshadowed by tragedy. The line on the map became a river of blood, leaving a legacy of trauma that endures. The German assault on Stalingrad began in September 1942 with relentless bombing, reducing the city to rubble. Expecting a quick victory, German troops met fierce Soviet resistance led by General Trikov. Urban warfare, rat war, neutralized German advantages, turning every building into a battleground. Life was hell snipers, hand-to-hand combat, starvation, and cold. As winter set in, the Germans, unprepared, suffered from frostbite and hunger. Meanwhile, the Soviets planned a massive counterattack. In November, Operation Uranus encircled the German Sixth Army, trapping 300,000 soldiers. Hitler refused retreat. The Luftwaffe's airlift failed. Inside the cauldron, Germans starved and froze as Soviets tightened the noose. On February 2, 1943, the Sixth Army surrendered. The battle lasted over 5 months, with 2 million casualties. Stalingrad broke the Nazi war machine. It was one of history's bloodiest battles and a turning point in World War II. Behind the numbers are stories of courage and suffering. During partition, some risked their lives to save neighbors of different faiths, defying the violence around them. Indian officials, Hindu and Muslim, worked heroically to protect refugees amid chaos. Women suffered terribly. Tens of thousands were abducted or killed, yet some, like Anis Kidwai, dedicated their lives to rescuing others. In Stalingrad, civilians endured bombardment and starvation, hiding in cellars, sometimes helping the defenders. Diaries from both sides reveal the psychological toll: despair, fear, and the struggle to survive. German and Soviet soldiers alike were pushed to the brink. These personal accounts remind us that every casualty was a life, a family, a future lost. In the darkest times, acts of humanity and resilience still shone through. Partition's immediate aftermath was chaos. Millions of refugees, shattered economies, and poisoned relations between India and Pakistan. The division of assets and unresolved disputes, especially over Kashmir, fueled decades of conflict and nuclear rivalry. The creation of Pakistan based on religion reshaped South Asia, eventually leading to Bangladesh's independence. Stalingrad's aftermath was a turning point in World War II. The destruction of the German Sixth Army ended Nazi advances and began the Soviet push to Berlin. The Soviet Union emerged as a superpower, dividing Europe and setting the stage for the Cold War. The world order that followed, two superpowers, a divided world, was forged in the ruins of Stalingrad. Both events redrew the global map, with consequences that still define our era. Partition and Stalingrad are warnings about the dangers of division, whether political, religious, or ideological. Partition shows how quickly neighbors can become enemies when leaders stoke hatred. Stalingrad reveals the horrors unleashed when ideology trumps humanity. Yet both also reveal resilience: people who sheltered neighbors, civilians who survived siege, survivors who rebuilt. These stories are not just about suffering, but about the strength to endure and rebuild. Understanding these events helps us guard against division and value empathy and peace. History's scars remind us our future depends on learning from the past.